Good afternoon and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete Lonton, and we have the infamous Donna Kennedy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on. So Donna, give us a bit of background. Who are you?
Well, I'm a 6 times best-selling author, a psychologist, and I do a lot of motivational talks as well, amongst many other things, but they're my 3 favourites. I guess I'm a bit of background. I'm from Mayo in Westport, born into a beautiful family, we're all very close, a big family, the 7 of us. And I guess my passion for helping people arose out of experiencing difficulties myself and having to overcome challenge myself. So when I was 7, I guess it started from there. I was raped by somebody who came to our home, and I just didn't know what to do with it, because obviously it's a thing for people. So I managed to hide it, but obviously you don't hide that kind of thing in your mind. It's still there. Deal with it. So you cope. You try and get on with life as normal as you can. I went along, and then I was bullied when I was about 12, and I think my self-confidence was quite low at that point. So I was walking home one day from school, and I passed a newsagent's, and I just went in, and for whatever reason, I wasn't a magazine reader then. I'm not now, but at that particular headline on magazine, so well, maybe if I lose £6, people might like me. So ridiculously, I started to, I was doing laps of the pitch at school. I was doing basketball, cycling, 50 lengths of the pool, crazy stuff. And I lost £6. And then it was almost like it became an addiction, and I had to lose more. Anybody who has ever experienced anorexia, which it ended up being, knows that it's not about vanity at all. It's about control. It's about the numbers going down on the scale and getting a little fix or a little hit each time, a little bit like a drug, I suppose. And every time you reach that target, you have that kind of reward feeling. And I went down. I'm 5'10" in height, so I went down to 5 stone, which is about, I don't even know what weight I am now, but about half the weight I am now. Which is quite incredible when I look back. Eventually it got so bad that I went into a very short coma, and I also was given a week to live, because obviously my organs were shutting down and whatnot. Fast forward that, I guess, thankfully I did get help, largely due to my mother and my father, my local GP, and they really stood by me. Nobody understood it at the time. I didn't understand it at the time, but eventually I was 15 and I was sitting, I had come out of a coma, and I was sitting on the bed, and my mom said, "Look, Donna, I don't know." I said, "Mom, I don't know how to get better. I don't know." I mean, the logical reason was, my grandfather gave me a great solution, which was eat 6 Mars bars a day and keep drinking Coke, which, and logically that makes perfect sense. Yes, it does. But for me, it wasn't a solution at the time. So I just said, "Mom, I don't know what to do." And she said, "Well, I don't either." So it was very much in a catch-22. Even though all the logical answers, and this is in the general population, when we're in a situation sometimes and we have all the logical answers, yet we don't still implement those logical answers, it's because there's something emotional and psychological there behind it. So eventually I worked through that, and thankfully I overcame it. I'm now healthy, and I eventually, and I know I'm giving you a nutshell version here, but I went on to do modelling. I got myself a job. I got back into school. I got into college. I was top of my class in college. Everything was going really well. And psychology is what I actually did psychology in college, and it's a quite competitive subject, believe it or not. You think it'd be the last subject that would be, but it is. So I had to focus a lot to do it, and I really put my heart and soul into it, and I did well. I got first in my top of my class for first year, but then I had a car accident, and I basically hit my head, and this was it was almost like round 2, I suppose, of challenge. But I hit my head in a car accident, and I wasn't, it wasn't a case where I was bleeding all over or whatever, but I just afterwards, I guess the way I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine, and don't give me an ambulance, I want to go home." So I went home, and for about 2 weeks after, I just started to experience symptoms of at the time I used to say it was like dreaminess. I felt very detached from my surroundings. You know, I just felt that I was out of sorts. I was hearing mumbles in my head, like when you're under a swimming pool. I just didn't know what it was. So I said it to my mom. I said, look, there's something wrong. And she said, I know. And I said, but I don't feel in any way emotional. I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel any inclination to do, you know, even my old behavior. So she said, look, let's go into the doctor. Excuse me. So I did. And the doctor was a locum, and she said, look, take antidepressants. She based it on my youth. And I said, but I'm not depressed. And she said, well, look, take them anyway. They'll make you feel better, because obviously she had her 15 minutes doctor time and she didn't investigate anything further. So I was actually put in for a psychiatric assessment, and I was in the hospital, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and this lady came over and she kind of poked, she had a green cardigan, she poked me in the chest. And she, obviously at that age, you know, you're looking at the ground, you don't want to look up and realize where you are. So she came over and she said, once you're in here, you'll always be back. She said, this place has a revolving door. And it's the last thing I wanted to hear. But, you know, that was what was presented to me. So I looked up anyway, and my mom and my dad kind of come out of the psychiatrist's office, and mom had been crying, and I thought, my God, I have cancer, or I have something, you know. I mean, I wasn't thinking, I just didn't understand. And remembering that I studied psychology, not psychiatry, so there is a difference. And so when she came out, you know, I thought, what's going on here? And mom came over and she basically said, Donna, they're saying you have schizophrenia and you have to be committed. They're not letting you go home, and they're going to put you on medication as quickly as possible.
So what age were you then? Sorry.
Yeah.
What age were you then?
I was nearly 20.
Okay.
So I guess they put, you know, they put numbers together and they just came up with the wrong conclusion.
Right.
They didn't have the time. I spent about 10 minutes with the psychiatrist. Mum and dad spent about the same. So in that time, you don't really learn a lot, especially if you don't know the person beforehand. So they basically gave me medication, which has since been taken off the market. But they gave me the medication. They gave me a sleeping tablet to get me through the night. They gave me an anxiety tablet to calm me down. Not that I was in any way irate, but, you know, they just do that. And within 3 months, I was on 14 medications, and I was like a dribbling zombie. Those stereotypes that you see, like with the bulging eyes and the drained look and, you know, staring and that. And my mom and dad just saw me deteriorate, and they knew that it wasn't me. Although after the accident, I was having times where I was feeling dreamy. There were more episodes, but I couldn't, you know, I was still have my job, you know, everything. So everything was, I was fairly well functioning aside from these episodes. So my mum and dad and my GP and a few strings pulled and all the rest got me into another hospital, which was also a psychiatric hospital because I was in that system. So you had to be moved from one place to the next. So I went into the new place, and the doctor basically did interviews with my mum and dad, a few people that knew me, asked what they had seen, you know, witnessed themselves and how they felt. And then they had a good chat to me. And my dad was very angry at this point because everybody knew I didn't have schizophrenia. And he basically said, like, you know, Donna was perfectly normal before the accident. Now she's like this. Surely to God it has something to do with the accident. And the psychiatrist in the new hospital said, what accident? It wasn't in my file. Neither was the scan that was taken of my brain in the general hospital, which showed a hematoma on my left temporal lobe. So basically he said, you know, I'm 99% sure now of what Donna has, which has let me, you know, monitor for the next few weeks. Let's take her off the medication that she's on and reintroduce and whatever. So they monitored me, nurses, the whole lot. And I was diagnosed with complex partial epilepsy, which I do have. And I have that for the last 19 years. So I just have episodes now. It's very well controlled. I lead a functioning normal life, as you know. I went back to college, and despite everybody, I said, right, I'm back to college. I'm getting a first class honours degree. I'm not doing this for nothing. So I went back and I got a first class honours degree. I opened up my first practice at 24, you know, so I suppose I excelled very quickly, but I did it not just out of my own willpower. I figured that if I could find people who had what I wanted, people who'd overcome different circumstances of difficulty, that maybe if I kind of copied their strategy or learned something from them and then implemented it, maybe I could come up with something similar. And I just noticed that a lot of people who were getting outstanding results, not just results you know, the mediocre kind of, if you want to be a baker, like the mediocre baker, these were people who were, you know, top class. And I kind of thought, well, there's obviously something in common with all these people, something that they're doing. So firstly, I started to read books, and I was listening to CDs, and then I started to watch DVDs. Then I was going to seminars as I got stronger, and workshops and so on. And I realized that the one thread that they all had in common, that it didn't matter where they came from, it didn't matter what academic education that they had, and nothing. The only thing that was making them successful, in quotes, was their mindset. And I thought, you know, this is quite interesting. Like, I'd been studying psychology. I was very interested in the biology of the brain, for obvious reasons. And I was very interested in behavior. And I decided just to study it, but in a different way. So I was kind of going down the path of clinical psychology. I'd got my interview. I'd been chosen to go through, and I decided, actually, it's not for me. I want to broaden it up. I want to use the practical knowledge that I have, and the strategies that I've learned. So I learned speed reading. I've learned different visual techniques, breathing techniques, you know, how to use your brain for effectiveness, immediate and long term, all those kind of things from these people. So I wanted to use those skills so that I could help other people who were in difficult situations. And they went from everybody who maybe needed a little bit of self-esteem to people who were, you know, maybe the night before they had tried to kill themselves, or, you know, that they were eggshell cases, as I would call them. And you know, I set up my practice. I had it literally became so busy. It was, you know, it was full on. It was 6 clients a day, an hour, you know, a day, 6 days a week.
So what was your specialty there with the business and the practice? What were you focusing on?
Well, funnily enough, because I qualified in counselling, originally it was counselling. I'm also qualified in NLP. I'm qualified in lots of different things because I did lots of different courses. And I guess, I suppose, I didn't really have a judgment when people came in. The question I used to always ask them was, you know, and the only reason I shut down my practice, and I suppose I only semi-shut it down because I'm still doing it, but I'm doing it more so in groups and on stage than I am in one-to-one. But it was just, I got so busy, and then obviously I met my partner and we moved locations and that kind of thing. But I never had like this is the only kind of person that can come through my door. It was, the first question I'd ask is, what do you want from coming here? It's not up to me to decide that. So for some people it was, you know, I want to be able to get up in the morning, or I want to be able to feel that I can live. And for other people it may be, I want to create a multi-million euro business and I don't know how. So it ranged so much, but my role wasn't really to decide what their goal was. The goal process is the same. If you ask anybody who's ever achieved something above average, they'll tell you the goal process is always the same. It's just the goal can be different. So you need to get motivation, be able to create it. You need to be able to create momentum, maintain momentum, you know, find your why, find your passion, all those different things that you have to achieve a goal. And I used every bit of knowledge that I had learned up to that point. And I basically looked at what the person wanted, what I felt would be the best approach. And I implemented that approach. And thankfully, I never lost anybody when it came to suicide. I get plenty of thank yous, and I'm in touch with a lot of people still. So, you know, it has been a massively rewarding experience. I guess I've just upscaled it now to being global and, you know, doing the stage, you know, speaking so I can impact more people at one time. And I guess it's just, again, you know, refining strategies that I've learned and building on those strategies each time, and continuing to learn from other people as well, and expanding my knowledge base. So, you know, this time in 10 years, I'll be a lot wiser than I was, you know, today. And 10 years ago, I'm a lot wiser today than I am 10 years ago. So that's what it's about. I think and I'm very much into togetherness as well. And I think if we all kind of got our egos out of the way and understood that every single one of us is in the same boat, we just happen to be going through different journeys because we're different people. But essentially we're all in the same boat. And if we get to a point where things get rocky, then we need to be able to help other people. We need to be able to step in, because sometimes at some day it will become our turn. And we would hope to God that someone would help us. And that's, I think, if we have that togetherness and collaborative approach, I think everybody comes out of it well. You know, where I think in Western society in particular, we've developed a very minimalist kind of you know, grab onto what you have and don't dare let anyone else have a piece of it. And that's the only way I can do well. And I've just found that that's, you know, that the people I've met who have that approach are very unhappy, or they're not very successful at all. Whereas people who, you know, any idea that I've ever had, and the people I hang out with now, it's, you know, I put it out an idea on the table. It's not like, oh my God, that's a stupid idea, or, oh sure, you know, that'll be great. We'll see how that one works out. Like, great, this is fantastic. Let's see how we do it. You know, I mentioned my son has written a book this week, to be published this week. And again, it was just a case where a lot of people would say, you know, even people that I know, would say, Ashlyn's writing a book, and they go, oh, isn't that cute? But never an expectation that would actually ever happen. Where he says to me, I want to write a book. I say, great, let's make it happen. Might be the creative or whatever, but let's do it. And when you have that kind of let's do it approach, ideas come in, you don't have the boundaries because you're quite flexible, and you're willing to bring in other people's skills and ideas, and, you know, it's a kind of more so creative process, and you get a lot better results with it. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. I look at what do people want, and it doesn't matter to me what it is. My role is just to get them there, and to do it in the shortest amount of time in a way that lasts long term. You know, I'm quite passionate about what I do, so I have to get the results or I'm not happy. So, you know, that's just, I suppose, the way I am. You know, it's, I love seeing people happy. I love seeing people successful, and by that I mean being the best that they can be.
What part of that, I mean, I'm just curious to know, you know, what's your happy place in that process? You know, is there, I'm sure there's certain parts that you excel at and you just naturally love, and other parts maybe not so much, but is there certain parts of the process you enjoy more than others?
I love when I get the result. I know sometimes there's hard work involved and that kind of thing, doesn't matter what it is, but I love when I get the result for people and their reaction. I also love meaning, when people feel that they have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. I believe that hugely affects our life and affects our longevity, and our mental health and physical health. So I love when I see that. I love when people, suddenly it's like, you know, the shine, the sparkle comes on, or it comes back, and it's like, God, yeah, I didn't know I could do this, and I get all excited. For me, that's the bit I love. People are, for the most part, 9 out of 10 people will beat you down. 9 out of 10 people will tell you that it's a silly idea, either verbally or they'll just imply it. And I think, you know, it's that 1%, to be around that 1% who have good thinking, who play around. They're kind of more childlike, rather than childish, but maybe the other ones are childish, but been childlike and creative, and been like an excited child at times, but with, you know, it's like live with your heart, but take your head with you kind of thing. And that's just what I do with my own life and what I do with other people. And I guess for me, it's just about giving people that sparkle, igniting it. And like you say, you know, you fire in the belly. It's different words, but essentially it's similar. It's a similar passion. It's of igniting, igniting that spark and making it grow. For me, maybe it's because I'm female. I just like sparkles. maybe I just see those sparkly thing going on. And also, I believe a lot in scientifically in energy, and we are, if people look at even the most basic thing, we are all molecules. We are all just floating around there, and depending on how fast something is vibrating will predict what form it takes, which may seem a bit far out, but when you understand energy at a scientific level, you can really use it to excel your results, because you get them quicker, because you're going in line with nature as opposed to against it. You're going with how our brain works, how our biology works, how even I study quantum physics, you know, how does that work? How can we use that tool, if you like? And I found one of the most powerful things is understanding how our energy works. And there's, you know, people just simply YouTube it, or Google it, and they'll find some pretty solid evidence to back up that if we can create a lot of movement or create a lot of vibration and high frequency mentality, results are easier to get. It's simple as that. And you'll find people who are very successful have that high frequency mentality, and they hang out with people of also with high frequency. So between, you know, that group, there's a high vibration. And I think that's why as well, both negative and positive, if you look even on a negative sense, if you look at a war, you have one person who may have a cause, you get, you know, 1,000 people with that cause. The level of energy and power is like colossal. You know, you look at the images across, you know, you pick different countries and you have people just marching like in sync, like it's really intimidating. It's that powerful. And it's the same on the flip side as from a positive sense. If you want a result and you want it quick, you have to create a high enough energy around it to make sure it happens with, you know, with that power, with that force behind it. And the only way we can do that, really, in my opinion, in my experience, is to be around people and to fill your mind with stuff that is high energy. And I'm not talking about, like, you know, your high fives and aren't we all great? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who think well, people who think well of other people, people who speak well of other people, people who are there to create, people who are there to, you know, help other people and to add to what could be an amazing thing. And I think, you know, the more people that we do, and that's why, you know, I mean, that's because I know the power behind it. I know that if you get great minds together, you know, you can move mountains very quickly.
What is it about that when almost in sort of the mastermind type principle, I assume, what happens? Can, you know, are you any the wiser when great minds come together? What is it?
They're on the same energy frequency. They've been through all the low frequency rubbish, and they've come out of it and raised their standards. So if you look at somebody, for example, who's either they're very angry or they're maybe very depressed or in a negative type emotion, they're kind of stuck. They're in like a frozen energy, if you like, and it's very hard to, it's very rigid and it's very hard. So in order to break out of that, you have to, there's no other way of doing it other than taking action and moving. And if you look at the greatest people who are greatest thinkers, if you like, they're very into action. They're very into taking steps. They don't sit there and do nothing. They are very into, right, let's do this, let's make this happen. And they take these steps, although those steps can be small, there's many of them. So I guess when people are around like-minded people, you know, it's not necessarily when people say, you know, with the law of attraction is that you attract people. Well, like ions actually repel each other. So that's, you know, that it's a semi-law, but it's not an exactly, you know, what you think about comes about is the law of attraction. But for me, it's not all about that. That's only a segment of the puzzle. And for me, there's a huge part about vibration. And when people, well, you see when things move together, they move together because they're vibrating at the same frequency. With anything, I mean, you can take the basic experiments in science. You go into a lab, the basic experiments in science, like you have magnetics, you magnetize and there we go. Or you can, you know, it's either attraction or repulsion. And if you can find people who will raise up that frequency, will raise up that vibration, you just find yourself, you know, vibrating with the right people. It's like, you know, I often use an analogy of a phone. Phones have different frequency. The phone is just a thing, like we're just a person. It depends on what conversation you want to have. And if you want to have a conversation with somebody that's quite detailed, or somebody that's quite, you know, cool, they have lots of things going on, you have to be prepared to be able to get the, you know, the phone that works to make that happen. You know, we can talk here because we're on a computer, but you know, if you didn't have a computer, you couldn't talk to me, or if I didn't have one, I couldn't talk to you. So in order to create a goal, you have to have the right tools, and the right people to implement them. So I make sure, it's not a snobbery thing. I'm sure lots of people think that I'm a snob. Even one of my best friends actually thought I was a snob when they first met me. But so maybe I come across at times as a bit aloof, but it's I'm very selective. I love everybody. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I love people. But I'm very selective as to who I let into my mind, because, you know, your mind, I see it nearly like a garden, and do you allow people to throw trash in it? Well, you wouldn't. Well, your mind is more precious, so you're not going to allow people to stamp all over it. And sometimes if you allow people who criticize you, or you allow people who are mean to you, who are jealous or horrible, if you allow that in, it affects you even physically. And I'm not prepared to give up my mentality or my body to anybody. I make sure that I look after myself, and that means seeking out and being around good minds. And that's how, you know, Pat and I are around people all the time who have very good minds. You know, you have conversations, you've had conversations, and I know you will, with several of them. Conversation is different than you'll have with somebody who's in an angry state or somebody who's in a jealous state. Very, very different conversations, and you'll feel very different physically after you speak with them.
That's interesting. You triggered a question there for me is, would you say that you're understood?
Depends on who you're asking, I suppose. Now, if you ask my family, you might get one answer. Oh, that one is mad. But you know what? I always look at, mad is making a difference or major advantage. That's
Yeah.
the way I look at it. No, on a serious note, I actually don't know, and I don't really care because, I'm not here to judge whether people understand something or not. I mean, it's like, I think I'd be quite pompous if I'd be thinking that, well, you're not at my level, so if people understand what I do, great. If they don't, I'll try and help them if they want to know. But if they don't, then that's entirely their own business. I have my own to look after. So,
but I think even
on
the level of even communicating, some people struggle with the words or trying to express themselves. I mean, blatantly. I mean, you're an author and things like that, so I would suspect communication is pretty strong for you, and you certainly come across very well. I was just curious. Some people go, yeah, but the people don't understand always how much I'm thinking, and and that side.
Well, I suppose that's why I use in my talks a lot of analogies. I don't talk about frequency and vibration and the ins and outs of the details. I can mention those words, but then in the explanation of those words, I use analogies. I use an analogy, for example, today I use an analogy of a phone, but I go into it in more detail, or I use an analogy of a computer, or I might use an analogy an analogy of a car if you are going on a journey of goal setting. So I'll always use analogies in order to help people understand at a basic level. And I've said this 1,000,001 times to people who are speakers. You get on stage and you are, whether you realize it or not, you're a person of authority, but what you say people take as truth. So you better be sure that what you're saying is truth. And you better be sure that you're giving a clear message, because if you're not meeting moral obligation. So when I go on stage or I enter a room, every time I enter a room before I go on stage, I say, right, there's one person in here. I hope I affect everybody, but there's one person in here who doesn't have a huge level of intellectual understanding. They may be in a very bad place, but my role is to get a message very simply across to them and to bring them out of a bad place into a good one. So I'm not there to sound intelligent. And even if you read any of the books, it's a conversational style. I don't need to, what is the point of telling people big words without explaining them, other than to show your own self-importance and intellectual intelligence? If you're genuine and you feel that you're in line with your moral obligation, which that's how I feel about when I'm on stage. I just feel that I have an obligation to deliver the messages that I've learned, but that has to be delivered in a way that people can actually understand them. That's the point. So I use it, I break things down a lot. I use graphics, I use animation, even at a basic level. Even, you look at a 7-year-old, my child is 7. I don't explain things to him in the same way as maybe an adult will have a conversation with an adult. They may be the same concepts. We were talking about the solar system today, for example, because he has to be homeschooled. So the solar system, in my mind, is you might as well learn about that as one topic, or first aid, or biology, or whatever it might be. But I'm not going to stand there or sit there, and I'm not going to talk to him in highfalutin concepts that he doesn't understand, because what's the point? And I'm not going to do that to an adult. So when I'm in a room or I'm on stage, I always think, how could I explain this as if it was to a 5-year-old child? And that's not to insult anyone's intelligence. It's to basically get the message across, so that I know when people leave that room, they get what I'm saying. If there's any misunderstanding, or if there's any uncertainty, those people come up and they'll ask me. Very, very few, but they may say, well, what do you mean by that? Or it's never what you mean by that. It's more, can you elaborate on that? I'm interested in it. And then I'd take them then to a different kind of zone if they want to learn about something else. But I'm not there to sound intelligent. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people as speakers make. And they're too polished. I'm not there to be polished. I might look polished, but I'm not there to be. As I said, I like my sparkles and my hair and my makeup and the whole lot. But at a core level, I'm real. And I think you need to be real and authentic to get results, to get long-term results with people. You can give people a quick fix, but it's not good enough.
It's more. Just out of interest, and you tapped on it there again, is what would you say your core values are?
My core values would be integrity, for sure, honesty, and love. They're definitely, I have many values as of us all, but they would be my three. And I just think we should all have a love for people. I think it's what people crave. People love to be loved. And I guess that maybe it's just because I'm kind of heart-centered. The integrity and the honesty thing is because I've always felt that in order to get results for yourself or for other people, you can't beat around the bush. You have to give it as it is in its raw form. So it's even something, I mean, I get clients to do out, I actually get them to graph it, their life in a very honest, raw way. Sometimes they like doing it and sometimes they don't. But at least we know where we're starting from. And that's a great place. And then integrity, I guess, is, if you say you're going to do something, you better damn deliver on it. That's where I look at it as, what's the point otherwise? And that's for me as well. I mean, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I would expect the same thing from other people. Not everybody would have the same value. So again, you hang out with people who do.
Is that, just out of curiosity, is that sort of values you had from your upbringing in your home?
I think they've always been a value of mine. I think they've developed over time, because I've learned more about people, and I've learned that not everybody is as you see them. But you don't, for example, I mean, I was obviously, I was caught out by dishonesty a few times, and caught out by people maybe not behaving in a way that they should towards humanity. But I guess you can't have an expectation that everybody will. You can't have an expectation that everyone will treat you right. But you can have that expectation of yourself. And if you have at least that expectation of yourself, you have a standard, that you can be proud of. So I don't mistreat people. I'm sure, certainly unintentionally, I may have hurt people throughout my life. Certainly with the anorexia, I hurt a lot of people. Not that I wanted to, but because I guess my need for control at that time outweighed. But now that I understand things better, now that I'm in a better place, I'm in a position that I can implement my values a lot more. I don't have to answer to anybody as such. I don't feel I ever have to. And that way you can be authentic, and people know when they meet you, it's, whatever about the surface stuff, they get to meet you. There's no pretense. And then every conversation you have after that, can be a cool conversation, because there's no like, oh God, I hope they don't find out this about me, or I hope they don't, This is me, warts and all. You either like it or you don't. And if you don't like it, good luck. There's plenty of people who do. And I suppose that's the way I live. And I guess I'll add more to that as I go along in my life, no doubt. But for the moment, I think, when I see people that are genuinely and truly happy, and I've been a part of that, and that's a very satisfying feeling for me, because I know they feel valued. I know they feel loved, and they feel wanted. And at the end of the day, every person I've ever worked with, every conversation I've ever had in relation to psychological help, or wanting to be performing better, has come back to one thing, and that is wanting to be good enough and to be accepted. You look at public speaking, somebody will quite happily share their knowledge to one person. You put them up on a stage and they have total meltdown. And if you look at the only differences between the two, is there's a big bunch of people, and there's a little voice in their head going, I hope they think I'm good enough. I hope I don't have a say something that doesn't sound stupid. But what's if you weren't worried about them judging you? And you can spread that out over a lot of different things. Jealousy is all about, how do I weigh up again? How do I measure up against those people? And if you look at any situation relative to importance or relative to confidence or anything, it will always come back to that. Once you take out all the layers, that's what it will come back to. And I suppose that's back to when we're even born. I mean, if you think, when we come out of the womb, we'd want to make sure that we're liked, because otherwise we don't get fed. So we do the little smiles and the gagas and the gugas and, oh, isn't that lovely? And we cry until we get what we want, because, we need to be satisfied as basic human beings. And we don't, unless you have a certain type of upbringing, I don't think, we get out of that fully. And it's no harm, but I think sometimes it can be a negative. Because people do things to be liked, and they are non-authentic to be, because of that. You look at social media at the moment, I mean, people don't put up as much selfies anymore because they don't have access to makeup, or they don't have access to the hairdressers, or people maybe are, they put up their best photographs, they put up the photos of their lovely Christmases, or of their, the perfect holiday snaps where they might have been killing the head off each other 20 minutes ago. And people do that because they like to show a version of themselves to the world. And I think now, actually, with all these restrictions and I think it's actually humbling in a way, because you either show people your real life or you don't show them at all. And it's a need for people to communicate. It's a need, it's basic needs that people don't like isolation. We crave being part of a wider community. And if we're not, if we go into isolation, we can go in all different negative consequences. So people still crave that communication. But when you can't pull off I'm in Hawaii today with my lovely partner, and we're having our whatever drink by the 5-star pool. When you can't do that and you're in your house, and you just have to give it as it is. So it's bringing people back to what actually matters, and allowing people to communicate at a very real level, which maybe it's just me, but I just think that's a wonderful thing. And I hope to God, after all the restrictions are moved, I hope that continues.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think it's a massive change. It's probably, it's an evolution or revolution in some ways, but time will tell.
If you even look at the call we had the other day with Mark Victor Hansen, I mean, he's a hugely sought after speaker, and there were people on that call, I'm sure, they wouldn't dare let anyone kind of see what the real lives are like. But I mean, I took Ashton, he wanted to tell people that he wrote a book. So he came up, he sat on my knee, talked to everybody, and he was fine, and everyone was quite okay with it. And a lot of people are good. Like if your kids right now, ran in behind you, I mean, if I had a problem with it, then that says something about me. I think it would be, it's just normal and natural, and that's what I'd love to continue after all this stuff that we find ourselves in at the minute.
I'm just curious to go back in terms of, we're talking about values, and I suppose through your anorexic period, what sort of values would you associate with someone, with anorexia? I mean, what's typical there?
I think the values are the same, that just the ability to execute them are different. We all have basic needs. So if you like, and I often liken it to a plant needs water, air, sunlight, soil, etc. If it gets them in balance, it blooms. So it is born to bloom. It is born to know what it needs.
Okay. If
you take light away from a plant, people will say, well, what happens? And their initial thing is it dies. Well, it doesn't actually. It'll only die if you leave it that way long enough. The first thing it will do, it will move towards the nearest source of sunlight. It'll look miserable doing it, but it will do it. If it doesn't get water, it'll scrunch it from its leaves, and it looks miserable, but it will do it. So when you don't have the tools and the skills, and none of us are born into the environment with a guidebook, when you don't have them, you do your best to get your needs met. So my life just went totally out of control. Control is a human need. I'm not on about control, excessive control. I'm on about, we need to have our lives in some sense of order. So it's not in chaos. But my life was thrown into chaos, and I just needed to bring that back to basic normal level. The unfortunate thing was I didn't know how to do it. So I just, like a pendulum, I just threw it the other way. And it was only until I learned how to bring a level of order into my life, and calmness and peace of mind, that I didn't have to go for those behaviors. I don't believe I am anorexia. I don't believe I am anorexic. Right now I'm eating very healthily. Could I go back to that behavior? Yes. But could I take drugs? Yes. Could I, do anything? Yes, of course I could, but I choose not to. So I don't think it's useful for people to take on labels as their identity. I think if people understand their needs and understand that we all have needs, they're all the same. Like plants, every plant needs the same thing. But if our needs are thrown off balance, the reality is, unless we have the tools to bring it back into balance, something will go wrong. For me, it happened to be anorexia. And the reason for that is because I simply happened to, come upon a magazine that was like an idea, and I ran with that idea. I could have equally come across, some people in the school that were doing drugs. They offered me a drug, and I possibly would have taken it. I don't know. Some people they engage in bullying behavior. Some people drink too much. Some people procrastinate, smoke, whatever. You pick it. It's just behaviors. And people will generally go for the behavior that fits that need at that time.
Hmm.
But it's only when you learn the strategies and when you learn the skills, as I did, you don't actually have any need for that behavior anymore. So it goes. I don't have any need to control everything anymore because I have order and peace of mind in my life, and I maintain it. Now, that said, I'm not stupid or naive enough to think that I could never go back to a negative behavior again. The reality is, though, because I'm so aware of what I need and I'm so aware of how I work as a person, I have strategies in place so that if I ever feel that my needs are thrown off balance, the reality is life happens. And I'll give you an example. When my mom died, which was only 4 years ago, yes, I'm out in the public eye all the time. But could I go back to that behavior because my life felt totally out of control? I mean, I was super close. And for 4 months, it was just like, even 6 months, it's just, my world collapsed. But I was smart enough to know that I could go for a negative behavior. So I basically said to Pat, my partner, I just said to him, look, I'm feeling vulnerable right now. So I just want you to make sure that you notice me eating breakfast every day. Because I knew if I ate breakfast every day, I continue to eat normally. And if I feel that I need to have a chat, I may need to have a bit more of a chat for the next while than I normally would. But those systems are put in place. If I needed to write something down, I'd write it down. Now, had those systems not been put in place, I could quite easily have gone back there. But I could quite easily have gone for a drug as well, or something else. So I think when we're aware of ourselves and we're aware of what our needs are, and the Confidence to Succeed book, there's a wheel in that I use as an example. And when you can see where your needs are at, and you do that graphing, I do it every 2 months, because again, I'm not perfect. None of us are. Life happens. We don't know how we're going to react to those events. But if we're on track and if we check in with ourselves fairly often, we should stay on track. But that means being real. It means being honest with ourselves. It means not having to have it together all of the time. And it may need, and this is why when people, think it's funny when I say certain things, I guess, because I just say things as they are. And I guess people don't expect me to, because what I'm doing, and people see, she's a 6-time best-selling author, and that I even spoke to somebody there about 6 months ago, and there was a girl, and she said to me, she needed to talk herself into talking to me 3 times before she actually spoke to me. And I was like, well, what was that all about? It's when she got to speak to me, and I know her quite well now, and it's like, oh, what was it that couldn't, it was like, oh God, why did I even think that? Because she knows there's no pretense. She doesn't have to reach a certain, I don't know what it is. It's like the same with celebrities. As people, if someone sees a celebrity, it's almost like they act a different way, almost like that celebrity is somehow better than them, which isn't the case. They're still a human being. They still get up with their bird's nest on top of their hair in the morning. They get up, they have to brush their teeth, they have to do all those things. And I think, again, if people remember that, you can have any conversation with anyone that you want and feel totally worthy of it. And that's why I do. I have no issue. People say, God, how do you talk to them? Or it's because they're my friends. Why would I not? Why would I, we don't have that kind of thing going on. So, and I think I love if people would adopt more of a kind of a flexible attitude, a softer attitude, where they don't have a conversation that they have with people either virtually or in person. They'd be a lot happier. They'd be able to achieve a lot more, and great people will walk into their lives, as has happened to me.
Just out of curiosity then, I mean, what's your perception of why people do stand in their own way? As you say, just ask the question, you just do this, but why do people not?
The consequence. Sometimes if you look at success, whatever that means to whoever that's listening to here, people say people are afraid of failure. True, but people are also afraid of success. So if somebody says, I want this, I know exactly how to get it, but I don't know, can I do it on an emotional level? Well, the reality is, when we take a step forward or take a step backwards, we're doing that based on how we feel inside, on emotion. It's not just logic. We all know everything logical to do. It's just strategy. It's the implementation of it's a different story. There's always that emotional kind of chatterbox there, the emotional, I suppose, pull. And it's that's the key. It's, what's that all about? And when we break it down, we look at the consequence of. So, you know, a good question for people to ask is, if they want to achieve something, well, if I do that, what does that mean for me? What are the positives and what are the negatives?
Okay.
And if you're not doing it, you can be guaranteed that you're not quite comfortable with one of those meanings, with something that brings. So for example, if I even look at, I mean, I can give you a couple of examples, throwing it right back to when I was younger. Was it logical for me to be healthy and well? Of course it was. My life would be better. I'd be happier. I could have friends. Fabulous. All the wonderful things. Yet why wasn't I doing it? Because the consequence was losing control in my mind. I felt that I wouldn't have control over my body, which was taken away from me. So I weighed it up in my mind, not knowing obviously until hindsight, but at the time I weighed it up in my mind. So which was the lesser painful? So the lesser of the two was to give up all being well, my friends, my family. That was easier than letting go control of my body. So I kept control of my body. So that's why if we look at behaviors, or why do people, another example, why do people stay in relationships that don't work? A relationship, an abusive relationship, for example, male or female. What is the consequence of them leaving it? They don't leave it because the consequence may be more unknown, it may be more uncertain, it may be more painful. There may be a lot of, you know, if they have kids, there might be a lot of emotion there. So they weigh it up, which is the worst of the two. And yes, to the outside, being hit, for example, may seem like, you know, an awful thing, and it is an awful thing. So why wouldn't you logically, it would make sense, get out there, you know, just get out and get, you know, get something better. But they don't, because, and obviously a certain segment don't, because maybe leaving that person means they'll be on their own. They may not be able to financially support themselves. They may have kids that they don't know, will the kids live with them or will they have to live with the other partner? There's all that unknown, and the person will weigh that up, possibly not consciously, but they'll definitely do it at an emotional level somewhere. And they'll, depending on whether, you know, you get, then someone may offer, they say, look, you can come and you can live with me for a while. All of a sudden it makes that decision easier. So you can base that on any decision you ever have in your life, any goal that you ever want to achieve. If you're not doing it, there's something about the consequence. Even though achieving it may appear wonderful, there's something about that consequence that you don't like. And then it's about becoming comfortable with that consequence, or bringing in something that deals with it.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, for anyone's listening, and myself, I'm curious as well, would your emotional level be your default? Is that the lowest level? You know, that's the base state, if you like?
Well, it's our fight or flight. So basically you run away from something, you're standing, you deal with it. Now, you know, that goes, I'm not saying we came from animals, but, you know, even back to basic principle of, you know, you go and you clap your hands even to a cat, it runs. It doesn't go, well, will I wait here and find out if this person dangerous or not? It just runs. And then after the fact, it may come back after it's analyzed the situation. It's the same with us. If we have certain things that are triggers, unmet needs are triggered, by the way, are triggers, should I say. And if we have something that causes us to feel threatened, we will either deal with it if we feel it can do it quickly, or we'll go away, possibly stay away, or we'll go away, have a think about it, and then come back. So that's why when someone is in a heightened state of emotion, for example, there may be, think about an argument. Two people could like each other. Something happens. Their values are in conflict. They're whatever. Something happens that they don't like. The emotions fly. And it goes back to being like two apes having an argument. They say things that they probably wouldn't say if they were in their right mind, of, you know, if they weren't emotionally hijacked, and they do things that they normally wouldn't. And it's only later, once they part and the logic comes back in, chemically it actually happens. Once that comes back in, that reason can be seen, and then maybe, you know, they can make up, or they can resolve it, or find a solution, or whatever. But when people are emotionally hijacked, that's what I call it, you can't see reason. You just act like an animal. You literally you're impulsive. And the bigger the threat, the quicker, the more impulsive you'll be. And it, you know, it goes back to basics, I think. And I think we're feeling humans. I don't think we're thinking humans. If we were thinking humans at a core level, I mean, there's a school of thought, you know, that where we have a thought, and then we have a feeling, and then we have a behavior. It's a very common school of thought, but I don't believe it. I believe we actually have a feeling first based on our environment. That triggers a thought, and then we decide whether we play around with that thought, and then we do the behavior. And we analyze it. We can't analyze when we're in chaos. We can't reason or have rational when we're in chaos. So I think if we were thinking beings, we'd probably analyze first, and then we'd feel. And I think that's useful to know. And the reason it's useful to know is because if we want to create change, there is no point you trying to convince yourself through thought, because you will either take twice as long until you eventually convince yourself, or won't work at all. So the easiest way to create change is to create it in a moment of heightened feeling. So if you, for example, this is why hypnosis works, you're in a heightened state of relaxation. You can also create change in an instant in a heightened state of fear, a heightened state of anger, and pick the emotion. If the state is heightened, you can create change easy. It just depends on you. And this is why I always focus as well. I look at, why do people want it? What's their driver? If I want to get someone to achieve a goal, I'm going to look at their why. I'm going to look at their engine. What stirs them up emotionally? And if something stirs you emotionally, you're going to get behind it and do it. If you know you have a holiday coming up, you're going to get in shape because you're going to be on the beach. Now, if the holiday wasn't coming up, you probably wouldn't care. You'd sit on the couch watching movie and eat whatever you want. But if there's an emotional drive, thinking is different. So you should always get some fuel behind your goals, some why, a purpose. If somebody wants to give up smoking, for example, and they just, they do it more when they're in social situations, they'll go out for a break. It's like that they're having a connection with someone, having a chat. There's all the kind of associations with it. Yet if they're told that they have cancer, their why, their energy, their drive to stop smoking will be higher for most people, because it gives such a level of fear, and they have a new behavior within that fear. So to create changes is so easy sometimes if you do it in a heightened state of awareness, which I always do with anyone I ever work with. I put them into a heightened state of awareness, one way or another, whatever it is. I make them so angry that they just want to. I'm only joking. Well, it depends. I've used that strategy once or twice, but sometimes you do what it takes. But it's about creating change quickly and then having it maintained.
Just out of curiosity, and because I don't want to make any assumptions, I mean, would you say obviously the rape that happened and your anorexia connected?
100%.
Okay.
100%. When it goes back to your needs. If your needs are thrown out, off balance, you will either, I liken it to a pendulum, you will either, your needs should be somewhere in the middle and you're fine. If it's thrown one way, you'll kind of bring it back. If it's really thrown in one way, you'll have a bigger reaction. So for me, in hindsight, at the time, obviously I didn't know this. I was just in so much in the feeling. I wasn't thinking with reason. In hindsight, somebody took control of my body. I wanted it back.
Okay.
Now, that said, I'm not saying that everyone who happened to them at all. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But in my case, that's what it was about. It was about wanting to get my control back, wanting to feel that. And even when I was bullied, again, that was a sense of control taken away from me. So I wanted to feel like I was powerful again. I wanted to feel like I was my own person again, that I wasn't somehow, there was a part of me gone. And to have my own thing, if you like, to see the numbers going down on the scales was almost like, yeah, Donna, you're doing it. You're in control here. You're in control. I used to weigh myself. Obviously I was at school. I used to weigh myself with my school shirt on and without. That's how refined and controlled it was. I used to get so angry. The first time I started to eat, I was told, okay, well, you have to have carrots and, whatever meal you have to have, and you have to have your potatoes and you have to have whatever you're having. And I remember once I counted the carrots and I wouldn't allow myself to have more than 5 pieces that were cut at a certain level, because I knew that might be an extra calorie. I mean, that is emotionally hijacked at its worst. And I couldn't get out of that until, to be honest with you, the feeling for me, and I think the crunch day for me, and I remember the day, was when I came out of that coma, because it scared the living daylights out of me, because I could feel myself in my bed. I knew I was awake. My eyes were closed. I couldn't open them. But my body felt like just lead. And that scared me more, because that was a real feeling of being out of control. I didn't like it. And then it was, I guess, the whole thing. You know, my father, I remember it was probably in the same week. I was standing at the sink, and I was getting a glass of water, and my baby finger was sticking out, and he grabbed my baby finger and he said, "Look at that, it's like a skeleton." And for him to say that was a big deal. You know, when I stood up, I fell back down because I just had no energy. And to see the pain that was causing people stirred me emotionally. And I guess when I had an emotional jolt, it was enough is enough. I've got to make changes, whether I like them or not. And I think when you are trying to make change with people fast, when you have to think quick, when you have to, and this is what I had to do, because I guess, you know, I was dealing with people who were even eggshells. There were people who, you know, you'd have somebody who maybe tried to shoot themselves the night before, or maybe the week before they tried to hang themselves. And, you know, you're in a state of, you don't have time to be convincing people of things. You don't have time to be plamassing somebody. We have to get something that works fast, that we can maintain, we can work on over time, so it actually lasts. So the only way that I found in my life that it's worked, and with, you know, thousands of people that I worked with, is to create enough emotion that person is bunched into it. They're excelled, that they can't not do it. It's either sink or swim. And when you find an emotion strong enough, anyone can change. You know, and I've had my methods, and I do what it takes. But, you know, sometimes you have to create enough emotion, and I get results for a reason, because I suppose I'm prepared to go out on a limb. I'm prepared to do what it takes, whereas other people may be so stuck in policies and procedures that they don't go outside that box. And if I have a client or I have a person in front of me when I'm on stage, it's my obligation to take them. They've come there for a reason. You know, they've invested themselves, whether that be, you know, monetary, or whether it be time, or whether it be, you know, their whole self sometimes. And it's my job to make sure that I give them what they're there for. Sometimes they don't know what they're there for, but I know that there's something better in them. I need to ignite that spark, but I need to get that back. And you can see that in people's eyes when you stir them so emotionally. It's like there's an awakening in somebody's eyes. It's like they just turn on. And I've worked with people, and to be honest with you, originally psychiatric cases were not my go-to. But I'm very thankful that I dealt with a lot of people who had psychiatric issues. And basically the way it came about was I was more dealing with softer cases, if you like, the regular cases, you know, your self-esteem, fear disorders, that kind of thing. And I just happened to have somebody who just came to me, and they happened to have been on medication for 25 years. They were in a bad way. Nothing was working. And I helped them. And it's not my job to take people off medication. So I actually asked them to consult with their psychiatrist and their doctor. And their doctor couldn't believe that this person was the way they were. And that doctor was the go-to doctor in Ireland. And I was his go-to person after that. He'd literally feed me clients all day long. And doctors around the country started to do the same. That's why I was so busy. But that said, that allowed me and gave me the skill to think on my feet. It allowed me not to get lazy when it comes to clients. It allows me not to be complacent, which I think is a very easy thing to fall into. Once you're qualified, or even if you're not qualified, it doesn't matter. Once you're in a helping role, it's very easy to fall into complacency. And then when you're handed something that is make or break, a lot of people can't deal with it, so they run. But I feel confident to deal with it. I might not like it, but I feel confident to deal with it because I have dealt with those eggshells. I've dealt with people who are in totally emotional hijack mode. They're not thinking straight. They're in a bubble of self. And it's up to me to just like pop. I need to break it, and I need to be there to hold them when they get out of it. And you know, that can happen even with people who I've, you know, celebrities, CEOs of massive companies. Nothing makes us any different at a human level. And we all have different roles, but at a basic level, we're all just emotional human beings. And any one of us could fall at any one time. So we need to be there to pick each other up.
Would you class yourself as intuitive?
Yeah. I get it wrong sometimes. Occasionally I've got it wrong, but mostly I feel people I don't mean that in a hippie sense now, or anything like that. But when I meet somebody, and that's why I guess, look, I could put a post up on social media and say, look, I'm doing this, and a billion and one, well, not a billion and one, but a lot of people would send me messages and want to be part of it. And the reason I don't is because I'm not in a position to meet every one of those people. So I can't get a physical sense for what they're like. I can't get a feeling for what they're like. I'm just going on surface stuff. So if my gut tells me, no, this isn't right, I tend to go with it. But I also check in with logic too. I always say, work from your heart, but take your head with you. You have to do that too. And occasionally I've got it wrong, but very rarely. And you learn from your mistakes.
Because you come across as quite kinesthetic, and that's sort of what I'm getting. There seems to be, very on the very feeling side.
Well, I think I'm kinesthetic, and I'm also visual. I see things a lot, so that's probably why I talk fast. My words don't keep up with my pictures. I guess I think I'm working with so many people, and when you feel their energy, you can't not. I do have techniques. Actually, I learned some fantastic techniques from a very well-known martial artist, and he taught me a lot of techniques for protecting myself. But sometimes, like if I go into an event, for example, I will straight away do a technique before I speak to anybody, before I go in. And that is almost, it's a physical technique that I do so that I don't let my guard down, because, and when I say that, I don't become hijacked by somebody else, because sometimes you have people who want to moan and complain and give out about people or whatever, and that's not good for me. So I have that distance there that I can hear them, but I don't have to allow it to affect me. So yes, I am kinesthetic, and probably I do think that has a lot to do with working with other people and refining how I manage other people and the space that they're in. Because if you're working with, as the same with you, Pete, if you're working with a lot of people, if people are talking negative, you're a human being, you cannot, but you're not going to get massively excited when people are talking about being totally depressed. So it affects everybody. So unless you have techniques put in place, you are going to be affected. So this is why, again, it's so important that we be around the right people, so that we keep that energy high.
Just out of curiosity, do you decompress? Because obviously some of the topics and issues you're dealing with are the most serious you can get in life, really, and do you have a decompression process, or how do you deal with it? Or
yeah, I do actually. I imagine sometimes, when I say this, I'm dealing with a lot of go-getters in the majority of the time, and more so now than I am with psychiatric cases. I generally don't deal with psychiatric cases at all now, because I don't have that support network that I'm in close, and I don't feel it would be responsible for me to take on a role where people are on medication and I have to manage that process. So instead, I do deal with a lot of people who maybe wouldn't be psychiatric, but they'd certainly be in need of help. They want, maybe go-getters, as I said, as well. But if there's something that bothers me, or if there's something that I think bothers me, I actually imagine at nighttime, I imagine that there's like a little hole in my head, and like a Hoover sucks it out. And I leave it there like on a very soft little buzz. It works away while I'm asleep. And I'm visual, I guess. So I suppose that is, as I said, I'm kinesthetic too. So it's a visual thing I do. When I used to work in places in even with my office, when I closed the door, I'd hear that sound. When the door closed, that was it. No matter how much I wanted to think about, the door was closed. So no, that was my cutoff point. And I guess, you do have to have those. Everyone is human. And if somebody tells you something that has a lot of feeling in it, thankfully I'm very strong. I'm very capable of holding a lot, because of my experience. It takes a lot to faze me. And it takes a lot to jolt me when it comes to negativity. But if something bothers me, if something is, if somebody is nasty, I don't like that. If somebody is nasty to either me or to somebody else. So I just let it go. I just let the Hoover work its way, and I do it at nighttime, and it works for me.
It's very energy efficient too.
That's it. Yes, it is. I check my electricity bill after. We know if it's higher, we know what kind of week I've had.
But it's interesting as well, because you talked about almost, I can't remember the exact words you used, but almost when you're on stage, you're almost into, you're thinking on your feet, I think it was the wording you used. Is that something you tend to do?
Yeah. When you go in, for example, if I'm using a slideshow, and I use slideshows not for following reasons, it's more for, as in, like, I could do a talk without slideshows. The reason I do with slides is because there's graphics, and sometimes people need that, and it helps people understand easier than trying to figure everything out. But you'll never know, an audience may change. You might go into a business audience, for example, and they may be very stiff and very, kind of formal and policies and procedures and do things or whatever. But then you might have millions that are totally into more, they're softer, they're more open-minded, and you have to mean that there's different dynamics in any group. And you always get someone who wants to ask a question, and you'll always get someone then who wants to ask a question just to be awkward. There's no relevance really, but they just want to ask it. So you need to be on the ball and watch the audience and watch what they're doing, and make sure that that you're there with them. And that you do need to think on your feet for that. And again, if I'm having conversations with people, the same thing. It could just take a totally different slant, and you have to be awake for that.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose almost that, again, that reading the room and the energy as well is something you would be sort of, is something you've trained to do, or something you've just done naturally, do you think? So say, in terms of reading a room?
I haven't trained formally to do it as such. I think it's because I intentionally went out to seek out people who were of a high level of energy, that I noticed people who weren't. And I've dealt with different ranges, and I guess it's very obvious when you deal with one extreme to the other. And then you have a lot of people who kind of fall somewhere in the middle. And people who fall somewhere in the middle, there's not really much effort as such. It's, you're dealing with kind of people who will just go with the flow and everything's fine. It's the other extreme, the extreme of when people are in a very bad space. You need to handle that more. And when people are in a very fantastic space, they're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So, you'd have to manage that. There's a lot of but there again, that's, if you meet someone in a coffee shop, it's the same thing. You have to, any conversation that you have, it's going to be a different personality. When you're in a room, you just have lots of different personalities. I go into a room and I think of just I think of like one person. I don't think of them as a blob. And when I can raise energy amongst each individual, then there's huge high energy. Now, a lot of people say about our events, there's a great energy in the room. It's because with Pat and myself, we focus on helping each person to be the best that they can be. And if one person is feeling good and we're helping another person feel good, they bounce off each other. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, why would we feel bad here? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we? One thing that somebody, was a very recent conversation that somebody said, and they said, why would someone want to be happy all the time? And I was like, well, why would you want to be miserable? So, and I guess there is a thing in society that if people have high energy or if they're happy, the majority of the time, it's almost like there's something wrong with them. It's like, well, what are you on? Or I'll have some of that, whichever you're on. And it's almost odd. And as a society, we kind of see it as odd. But when you spend half of your life in misery, you make sure you don't spend the second half of it in misery. You make sure you spend every moment and make sure it counts. So I guess now I focus on being happy. Am I happy 100% of the time? No, and nobody is. But I'm happy the majority of the time. And I think if you're focused on being happy the majority of the time, your life is pretty good. I focus on, each moment. Like each moment that you breathe, it's a reminder that you're a miracle. That's the way I look at it. And if you're ever stressed about something, all you have to do, and you take a minute at a time and you say, in this moment, how do I make this particular moment as good as I can make it? And then once you've done that, you say, right, how do I make this moment? And you do that 5 times. And once you're so conscious of doing that, after a while you become naturally conscious, if you like. It just happens. But sometimes you need to check in with yourself. So I would say to everybody, you have to check in with yourself often. You know, and don't become complacent about yourself or lazy about yourself.
When you talk about the checking in process, what does that look like? You know, what's...
Well, there's a few things. I do it formally. First of all, I do it with a graph. I use a wheel, and it's a specific type of wheel. It's not like just a wheel of life thing. It's a specific type, where I graph it and I monitor it. That's one thing, and I do it for myself every 2 months, as I said. The other thing then is, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling low, if you're feeling an emotion that you don't like, check in with yourself. If you're doing a behavior that you don't like, check in with yourself. So for example, if I found myself, which is never really happens to be fair, but you know, occasionally, if I found myself thinking badly about somebody, I need to check in with myself, because it doesn't feel right to me. It's not aligned with who I am. So what has that person done? What do they represent that has annoyed me? Maybe I need to deal with that. Or check it, has my value been, you know, if you find yourself arguing, for example, with somebody about the same things all of the time, it's probably because they're in conflict with one of your values. And if you can explain to them what your value is and why it's important to you, it may not be important to them, but why it's important to you, it's received better. Things like that, where if there's any way at all that I'm ever thrown off balance, and that just means whether I feel emotionally stirred, I check in with myself. And just sometimes that can be just a simple conversation. It can be a little note, you know, what do I not like about that? What does that mean? Why am I afraid of that? Or, you know, what is the consequence of that? Checking in that way. And do I do it all the time perfectly? Absolutely not. But I try and do my best and do it as often as I can when I need to do it. And the times when I do it consistently are the times when I'm happiest. I'm happy most of the time. We'll just put that.
That's great. So can I ask, I mean, do you have certain daily or weekly rituals that you go through? Obviously, you know, you're saying you're checking in, and that seems to be more of a, you know, sort of an 8-week, 2-monthly type thing. But from a daily point of view, what would you typically do?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, like nobody does. And I run around, you know, I have 3-hour gym session, then I go to work and I have my green juice drink and everything is fabulous for the day. No, I get up at a regular time, and that is when my son wakes me at 7:30 every morning without fail. He'll come in, he'll jump on top of me for his morning hug. And then I have my diary set out for the following day as to what I need to do. And I follow that diary for the week, whatever it is. I try and maximize my time. So if I'm having a call, as a compliment to you, I don't just give calls to anybody. And that's not, it's not a snobbery thing. It's, you know, if it's a value of my time, it's a value of your time. And there's a purpose. So I suppose, you know, I'm careful with my time and where I put it. At the moment, my life is slightly different in that 2 hours of my day are taking up with homeschooling, which is not something I ever thought I would be doing.
The solar system?
That has to be done. That's it. Yeah, that has to be done. You know, and I try and make it practical. So it's kind of interesting for me too. There's a selfish side to it, but yeah, he does find it interesting. And then I just make sure that I maximize my time. Whereas before, again, it was Pat and I planned Ashton because I have epilepsy, you know, and I do have to take medication for that. He was planned. So I knew I was pregnant at 3 weeks. And when we spoke about it, I mean, I'm very driven, Pat's very driven. We both have goals. I had no intention of giving up my goals, but I also was under no illusion that, you know, a child takes looking after, and if you want to bring up your child with your values, then you have to be there with them. That was my particular what worked for me. So I chose that, okay, well, when Ashton is at school, that's my cutoff point. That's when I need to spend time. Yes, there are exceptions, of course. If we're doing an event, you know, my family will step in, or I have a lady who steps in as well. Or if we're doing something like an evening call, you know, everyone works together on that. But for the most important stuff, I do between when I drop him off from school for 8:30, starts at 8:30, and he finishes at 2. So I know I have to get my work within that time done, no matter what. And it actually focuses me a lot better because I just decide what I need to do for the week. I have to get it done within that time. So, you know, it's like if I said to you, you've got Friday off, if you do all your work between Monday and Thursday, you get it done.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't have the lazy hours. And we all have lazy hours, don't get me wrong, but when you make better use of your time, you're not just giving it away to anybody for any reason and then you get tired. You're doing stuff that matters with people who matter, and you're getting results. And that's what I teach people as well, is that if you have something that you want to achieve, you got to, you know, have segments of time. You know, if I'm even with books, I mean, I did a collaboration the last time, and, you know, I'm not going to tell people to go off and just waste your time and write drivel for 5 hours and come back and yay, you know, we get rubbish. It'll be, here's your segment of time. You do it quality in that segment of time, and then you go and you do whatever else you have to do. And that's the way I do everything. It's like, if you have a task or a goal that you want to achieve, assign a certain time to it, and then say, what do I want to do for the rest of the time? So for me, my choice is I want to spend a lot of time with Ashton and my family. The reason I do is because, you know, I grew up in a big family. Family is very important to me. And I like to spend that time. I'm lucky, I'm blessed enough that I can arrange my work in a flexible way. Not everyone has that opportunity at the moment. For example, a lot of people over the last few years, you know, you have 2 parents working, or 1 parent, maybe a single parent, they're working, and it's not so easy just to, you know, spend that time with your child that they may like. I'm fortunate enough that I've arranged my work that I can. But my time after, you know, 2 o'clock is, unless it's something that I really need to do, it's for Ashton, it's for my family, and doing whatever we want to do, which may seem like I'm taking half the day off, but I'm working twice as hard in the first part. You know, and you get it done.
No, that makes sense. Just out of curiosity, you know, so you're saying you've seven brothers and sisters?
There's 7 of us in total, so I'm 7. Yeah.
Oh, so you are the baby, are you?
No, I'm not. We had mum and dad had 4, and then they had a gap, and then they had 3, and I was the elder of the second half. But I always say to my older sister, I said, they had you. I said, and that was it. They just said, we're never having another child again. She's so much trouble. And I said, then they had a gap, and then they decided, well, maybe we'll try to test the waters. Then they had me, and they thought, oh, she's amazing. Now we'll have another 2. So I always say that to my sisters. But yeah, we have a big family.
And I mean, are you all on similar professions, or just all different?
Totally different. Totally different. One of my brothers, he does gardening. You know, he just should have been born in mud. I'm sure he was. He used to, you know, he picks worms up. If it's all the 2 of us together, he has so much hair in his face. I'm sure if you took it away, you'd probably see me in there somewhere. But for the, you know, he's just totally into outdoors. He now prunes bonsai trees. Very grounded. He could tell you, if you heard bird song, he could tell you what bird it is. He could tell you any leaves of the trees. He's a genius when it comes to that kind of thing. My other sisters, then 2 of my other sisters work at home. They're home moms. One of my sisters is managing very excited to come out of that. She runs a B&B now. One of my sisters is a special needs assistant, and my brother is a primary school teacher.
Wow, okay.
So totally different. And totally different personalities.
Makes sense. I mean, at the time, like going back, I mean, had you any inclination what you wanted to do when you sort of grew up? I mean,
no, I'm sure I had many things I wanted to do. I had a pet snail at one point, so a snail farmer could have been in there somewhere. I don't know, but I'm sure there are many. You know, when you naturally go through, you want to be the doctor, and you want to be the this, that, and the other. I suppose that's all through role play and stuff. But when I started to overcome challenges, I think it was just a natural thing for me. I never want anyone to go through or feel how I did. So it's almost like a natural thing that it upsets me if I know others are upset. So I do everything that I can. So in order to do that, I guess I was in school, I then went to college. My natural avenue was psychology. You know, and psychology teaches you very little by way of practical things. My life has taught me more practical things that I think I have a unique understanding of people that maybe other people haven't, in a way, because obviously people go through different things. The one thing I did enjoy about the psychology and have found hugely useful is to learn about the biology of the brain, to learn about things like autism, to learn about, you know, different ways people behave, even forensics, you know, learning if somebody's lying, things like, you know,
Okay.
things like that. You know, everyone, you know,
I'm
when
conscious.
I say
I'm
that,
conscious
people
now.
say, "Oh, what way am I looking now?" You know, things that kind of like that. But from a helping point of view, and this is where again it comes back to, do you really want to help someone, or are you doing it for ego? Like my things, I just want to help somebody get to where they want to get to. I do whatever it takes. I've learned so many different things, and I've done so many different courses, and I've learned from so many different people, that I have a very plentiful toolbox. So whoever I meet, I can take out one and I know what to use. And maybe I might need to take out 30 in some cases, but I know how to use them, and it usually works out. So I think, you know, my experience of everything has maybe led me to have the career that I want. And it actually, funnily enough, I never saw myself being a speaker. In 2004, I had a notebook and I was writing down my goals, and for whatever reason I actually drew a girl on a stage with loads of an audience, and I didn't know why I did it. I found myself drawing. I love drawing. And I just drew it, and I just said, oh, whatever that was about, and I just left it at that. And actually I became a speaker by default, because I was hosting events, I was running events, and I was the MC for each of our events. And one of the speakers over, and even Pat was saying, you know, why don't you do a talk? And I was like, well, what would I speak about? And not realizing kind of, I'll actually have quite a lot of information here. So, and the people could benefit from. So I said, no, and I'll MC another one, and I MC'd another one. That's the way it went. And then one of our speakers, his flight was cancelled, and you can't leave a stage empty. It was a multi-speaker event. So we said, okay, what were we going to do? And there were 90-minute slots, so you can't kind of have somebody going up and doing, you know, 3.5 hours and then coming back. And so I said, just give me a flip chart, I'll do something. So I went up with a flip chart, and I just did about what I felt was right for that audience. And, you know, it went great. And then people started asking me to speak at different events. And that's just, it so kind of snowballs from there. But it was very much, I didn't set out to say I want to be a speaker. I'm going to go and I'm going to learn at some kind of speaker school, or I'm going to learn how to be polished, or I'm going to learn, you know, the techniques. I didn't need that. It was just to have a conversation with people on stage. And one of the things that a lot of people say about my talks is they're very real and authentic. And I like that. And I like the fact that I'm not polished. And I like the fact that I don't use, you know, techniques as such on stage. Yes, I teach people techniques, but that's for their own mind and for themselves to do, you know, for the betterment of their own lives. But I don't do techniques, and I don't feel the need to, because then it becomes too much about me and a performance. It doesn't become about having a conversation. And as a speaker, you should be having a conversation. That's what people have paid for. That's why people are there, whether that be monetary or time. So
you thought about it, or for some reason you thought about it in 2004. So when was your event?
2009.
So 5 years.
Yeah. And I just was doing my practice. I was quite happy doing my practice. And then I got very busy doing my practice. And I was taking on somebody else because I was just too busy. And it's very difficult to say no to people when they're ringing you up and they need help. So I physically, literally could not take on any more workload. So I just decided I'd take somebody else on. And then I met Pat, and Pat had 3 kids before we met. And it made sense for me to move, not for him to move. So I moved to a different county and I closed my practice. So, and I, you know, it's funny because people were still contacting me. So I was working without having a formal, if you like, a formal setup. And then I just started to work with groups. And it kind of just happened, if that makes sense. It's just, you know, one person, I'd acknowledged somebody in my book. One of my books, I decided I wanted to write a book. So I acknowledged one person in my book, actually was Mark Victor Hansen. And then I got Mark to speak at an event. Again, I had no agenda. It was just, will you come over? This is what we're doing. He knew I didn't have an agenda at the time. I guess he had known a bit about me from different people who have told him about me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like it's this collective kind of thing that goes on. So I suppose I've been kind of gently coerced into it, you know. And I'm quite happy. I love it. I love doing what I do, and I love speaking to audiences, whether that be on stage or whether it be virtually or one-to-one. I love helping people.
That makes sense. I mean, just in terms then of, you know, getting you into a flow state or creative state, you know, do you have a process for that, or, you know, how do you tend to?
When you think for writing or for
whatever. I mean,
conversations or events?
Yeah.
Or?
So, I mean, you talked obviously about, you know, going on stage, but I mean, well, where would we find you at your peak state? You know, your natural, where you sort of almost gone, God, Donna was born to be on stage, or Donna was born to write books, or whatever. So it's a two-part question. Where's your peak, and then what's your method of getting to state?
Lots of people, you know, say I've been born to be on stage and the whole lot, but to me, I haven't reached my peak. I have lots to do yet. I'm on a mission here, Pete. So I have lots to do. When I'm doing talks of any kind, or when I'm doing any project, doesn't matter what it is, there's lots of different things that I do, whether it be, you know, personal or business. I always think about the person I'm delivering to, and I ask, what do they need right now? For example, I'll be doing a webinar this evening, and I'll be talking about fear, because right now a lot of people are in fear, and they don't know what to do with it. So I just think about, what is it? I mean, I have so much knowledge in my brain, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that because I've collected it along the way. So I know that no matter what audience I have, I know I can give them something that they can use. So it's really, it's a matter of me just finding out who are the audience, what is it that they're lacking, what is the gap, and I need to fill that gap. And how do I best deliver? And it goes back to, you know, the message. What message do I feel that these people would benefit most from? How can I deliver it in the most simplistic way that they'll actually get the message? And then how do I show them how to implement what I've told them? And that's, I suppose, even asking questions is a flow thing for me. It allows me to get creative. You know, what do these people need? How can I do that? It's just, that would be the way I would unpack it, if you like.
So, I mean, does that get into then the visual side? You're saying visually you're quite strong, and do you almost paint the picture in your head? Is that?
I actually, you know, when it comes to events, I think of one person in the audience, and I picture them, and that can be male or female. It doesn't have to be a particular person. I can just picture them in my mind. And I say, right, what do I need to give this person right now? What conversation do they need to have? What do they need to hear? What, you know, shoe up their behind do they need to have if they need one? What pat on the back do they need to have if they need one? And I guess I do it that way. I think very much about just that one conversation, that one person, that energy I need to put behind them to rocket fuel them into what they want.
I was curious then, so way back you talked about, obviously, your sort of the evolution of personal development. You talked about books, CDs, and then DVDs. Where did it all start, or what stands out for you in that process?
When I came out of the coma and I was sitting on the bed, my mom, throughout, say that even the 2 years, she used to read self-development books to me all the time. She was very ahead of her time. She even got me a colouring book. I mean, can you imagine giving a 15-year-old a colouring book? She gave me a colouring book. It was an affirmation book. It was quite clever what she did, actually. And I had spent so much time on my own, so at the end of the day, you know, it was something to do. And she asked me to colour it in, and there was a page a day to colour it in, and there was an affirmation, and I had to read the affirmation. And now looking back, she was trying to get me to put colour into something that was black and white, which was very clever. She was always very spiritual. She had a great faith. She wasn't quite sure where that faith was in that, when I say in a certain religion or whatever. She later found out later in her life, but at that particular time, when I was ill, she was searching for things. So I guess in that sense, I was like a semi guinea pig as well, because I was brought along with her to these different faculties, you know. I mean, I knew about Reiki at 15 before I even hit Ireland, you know, all of these different things. Qigong as well, you know, so it's a slower form of Tai Chi, and all these things that she had me doing, which are all beneficial in their own way. But she was reading a lot of self-development books to me. So I suppose I started reading them myself, and I started doing what she told me to do and practicing what she told me to practice. I started to do Qigong out in the garden. I'm sure my neighbours thought it was crazy, but I did start to do it. She had videos at the time. There were like different trainings and whatever. So anything at all, she even did like Reiki on me. I mean, she was, when I think about it now, when she was doing this thing and she was going like this with the webs, and it's like, oh, whatever, you do whatever you have to do. So I suppose the second time when I was in the hospital, with the epilepsy and everything, I thought back to the first time and what helped me recover. And one of the things that really helped me was she used to tell me to be grateful for 10 things every day. And it's something that she did since I was 5. And the reason I know since I was 5 is because I started school at 5, and she'd roar out the window to me as I walked to school, say your 10 things. So I'd always have to, at that time, it was thank God for 10 things. So I was just saying thank you to whoever. And it was thank you for my shoes, thank you for the tree, thank you for whatever it was at the time. But it stuck with me. So to this day, I actually think I even have it. No, I don't have it here. I'd have to get up to get it. But it's a gratitude diary that I do. It's something that I give clients. It's say your 10 things. That's what it's called. And I went back to that and I looked at what was I grateful for. So when I was in the hospital, I took out a pad and pen and I wrote down what I was grateful for. I didn't feel very grateful at the time because I was quite angry, because kind of essentially 6 months of my life were, you know, bashed around for unnecessarily if the person had done their job. But I thought, what can I be grateful for? So I just looked around the room and I thought, right, well, there was a heater, even though it was a stuffy one. I just thought, right, well, at least I'm not cold, so I should put that down. But funnily enough, the first thing I put down was lipstick. I had brought a lipstick to the psychiatric unit. Like, what was I? What was I even thinking? You know, I was keeping my look. Even in a unit, I didn't drop my standards. But I wrote out different things I was grateful for, and I did it until I got an actual smile in my heart. And it took me, I think it was 39 things, and it was 63 the first time, one or the other. I can't remember which, but I know because I wrote it down. But that's a lot of things before you feel grateful. But I found then when I got into that flow after 10, it was like, oh, well, actually I'm grateful, and there's that, and there's that, and there's that. And it was only after a while, and I thought, actually, do you know what? I don't have it so bad after all. You know, there are people out there, and I know it's cliche, there's people worse off than you or whatever, but there actually are. You know, I'm alive. I can see you. We're talking, and that's something that some people would just dream to do. You know, there are people fighting for their lives, and here was I moaning and groaning about mine. So, you know, it was when you get a bit thick with yourself, when you say, we cop on, you know, but maybe that's actually from a big family. Maybe that's what I got from them. It's like, cop on to yourself. You know, we're not listening to you. Just get on with it. And I took that approach for myself. I said, right, you can sit here and be miserable and waste the next while, or I can just, you know, take what I learned and do it fast. And I did. And I remember looking out the window as well, because it was millennium, and I remember looking out, and I love fireworks. I've always loved fireworks. And there were, you know, under fireworks displays. It's just, it's fantastic. The sparkly thing again. And just the sparkles. And I remember the little tiny pathetic little sparkles in the sky that were far away. And I was in Stillorgan, which is about 25 minutes outside Dublin. And they were doing the Millennium celebrations in Dublin, but you could still see them, but they were just like little pathetic sparkles. And I said, what do I need to do to get out of here? And my motivation was fireworks. And really, when I think about it now, my motivation was fireworks. And my method was grounded in gratitude. And that's, I think I just wanted it. I didn't want my life to be anymore to be taken over, because a lot of it was taken. So I thought, no, I'm not having. I actually think now that I think about it, I think that's why I'm selective about who I allow to take my energy, because a lot of it was taken when it shouldn't have been. So I'm not about to let any more of my energy be taken by people or circumstances that aren't good for me. So I just focus on what keeps my energy high, what keeps me to be a good person, and keeps me driving forward. And I get it wrong sometimes, but the majority of the time, if I get it right the majority of the time, that's good.
Mm. Just out of curiosity, because we're talking about success earlier. I mean, define success for you, because I think you sort of saying what it could be for other people, but I'm just curious what success means to you.
Success means waking up in the morning and knowing that you're being the best that you can be in any given moment. That for me is success. And that can be getting out of bed in the morning and knowing that you are in your best state. For some, it's reaching the medal of, if you're an Olympian, or for some as a baker, it's for, winning the competition, or the cake, or for a business person, it may be for hitting the target of X amount of money. It can be for anybody, for anything. I think because there are so many books, so many programs, so many different things about success. Success has been tagged in Western society for the most part, to money and wealth and how well you're doing and how much material goods that you have, which is unfortunate. Now, one of my books is called The Confidence to Succeed. And you might think, why did I put succeed in it? And it's to totally unpack the myth of success. Success is not something that you can have ever or chase. Being the best that you can be is, but that's a consistent thing. So, where people say, well, I'm this person, or I'm this kind of person, or I have this disorder, or I have this, so I can't do that, or whatever. I don't buy into that. And the reason I don't is because that's not you being the best you can be in any given moment. We are moment to moment people. And if I can take care of my moment in that moment. Now, when I say, for example, let's say you have somebody who has Down syndrome, okay? Down syndrome is a thing, right? It's real. Gene 21, right? It's a very real thing. But years ago, somebody with Down syndrome was put in a cart, in Ireland anyway. And even in Stephen's Green, there's actually an archway that, if you ever find out about the history of Dublin, and they used to wheel this lady who had Down syndrome in a cart into her house, because they didn't want anyone to see her, because they were considered, up until the 50s, which is not too far away, it was quite recent, to be changelings, so that the devil somehow came in and took the real baby and replaced it with ridiculous notion. Okay, so that is a notion that will keep somebody beautiful who happens to have Down syndrome into some kind of ridiculous, horrible place of existence. Whereas I know people with Down syndrome, and they're still those beautiful people, but it's up to us to decide, what do we do with the situation that they're in relative to their ability. So that's the difference that I mean. So I don't buy into when somebody says, I can't do that because, I've one leg. Okay, you have one leg, and that is horrible. But that doesn't mean to say that you're dying. Now let's see what we can do with the rest of you. You have another leg, you have two arms, that's the way I think. So, but I think sometimes we can allow our conditions to be excuses, or we can allow our conditions to keep us a certain place because the fear of what might happen if we do X, Y, or Z. And I had that fear. And I used to say, well, I can't do that because I'm anxious. When really, anxiety was a feeling. And I was generating that feeling consistently. It's a moment-to-moment chemical reaction. And I was generating that in my mind. I didn't realize I was. But I was generating it because I was thinking, almost like running a movie in my head, I was thinking about all the things I did wrong, all the things bad that happened. Not only that, I was predicting things by visual. I was visualizing in the future of all the things that would mess up, no one liked me, blah, blah, blah. And my body was responding to those pictures through chemical responses. And I was feeling bad. When I changed those pictures, when I changed the way I was representing my circumstances, different chemicals were released to my body and I felt better. So it really does depend on how you're representing your situation, how you're representing the things that you have. I could say I am anorexic. That's not useful. I did anorexia behavior. I did it often. But I am not anorexic. I'm Donna. who happened to be doing anorexia behavior. And if you view things from that point of view, you have your identity. Epilepsy is a huge one. I was asked to give a talk actually to a national epilepsy group because they found my approach to epilepsy quite strange. Not strange, strange in a good way. A lot of the time, and even I pulled and I don't normally do this, but actually I pulled somebody up on they were an official body actually, and they had posted a tweet about epileptics, and I said, why would you call somebody an epileptic? They're a person who happens to have epilepsy. I don't see myself, and it's not some kind of deluded version of reality, I don't see myself as an epileptic. I'm Donna. I happen to have epilepsy. Now, get on with my life and deal with whatever I have to do. So with epilepsy, I take the medication that I take. I would take alternatives if I could take alternatives, but to be quite honest, I don't want to go back to where I was. I was having 4 or 5 seizures a day. So, you know, you can call that, is that weak on my part? Possibly. But I have my identity as Donna, and I do whatever I have to do and whatever I can do based on my current situation to be the best that I can be, to be as successful as I can be. So if somebody, that's what I'm saying, is that sometimes I don't buy into notions. So people say, oh, well, I can't do this because, or can't do that because. I don't buy into it. If you have, you know, a condition, you have poverty, you have, you know, relationship difficulties, confidence issues, whatever it is, the situation is, you know, you give it whatever label you want. How do you deal with that? How do you perceive it? How do you view it? How can you view it differently so that you get a better outcome? And I guess, you know, that comes when I deal with clients, I'm a straight talker. And not everyone, that's what I meant, you know, where I said, you know, not everyone is prepared to go out on a limb and risk policies and procedures. I do. I don't actually, my first priority is getting a result. And sometimes the result is, don't let that stop you. Now let's see what we can do. Or I'm not listening to that BS. Now let's see what we can do. And there's always a way, always. We may have to do it differently, but there's always a way to do something. And there's always solutions. Someone has done it before you. It doesn't matter what it is. And if they haven't done it before you, let's collect all the skills of the people that we know and create a recipe for doing it. And it should work out. And I guess maybe I did it out of necessity, out of desperation. And I had to stop feeling sorry for myself. I had to stop and give myself a, you know, as my family say, cop onto yourself. And I did. And look where it's taken me. It's taken me in a lot better route.
I have this mad picture in my head of you doing whatever it takes, and I have this carjack running around a car park chasing a client. Very unorthodox, and I don't know why.
Okay, that I'm a carjacker.
No, well, they come with a wheelbarrow. Sorry, you know, it's like I will.
Oh, God.
I will sort you out.
Well, yeah. I haven't tried that approach yet. maybe it will. Maybe someday I'll meet someone and they can change a tire, and you know, it's like, just do it. I don't know. But look, you do it. To me, you have a result. You do what it takes, given a certain circumstance, and you can do what it takes. And it's the people. And if you look at all the people who've achieved, you know, exceptional results, they're people who were once desperate. That's what I found the interesting part. They're people who, you know, you look at Einstein, failed maths, Walt Disney, one of the biggest companies, yet he was fired from his job for lack of imagination. Do you know, Michael Jordan was just on the sidelines. Look at him. Do you know, I mean, these people have gone on to be exceptional creators, exceptional people, although they came out of, for want of a better phrase, nothing. And I truly do believe, having met so many, been friends with so many, that I think the reason for it is that they don't have an alternative. The only alternative is failure. That's the only, and even that isn't even an option because they live in it. So it's, you know, I either cop onto myself and I do something about it. I have nothing to lose because I'm already in a bad situation. So, you know, let's just try. And they don't give up. They keep trying and they keep trying, and they don't get knocked back by the failure because they've been told it all their lives anyway. So it doesn't become such an issue. Whereas if somebody has been conditioned to believe that in order to be a successful human being, you have to fit, you know, X, Y, and Z box, it's more difficult to achieve, and a knockback hits them harder. Whereas if you have somebody who's doing it, like I did the things I had to do because I was desperate, because it was necessity. There was one way I was going, and that was 6 feet under with daisies on top of me that's the reality of it. A scary reality, but that is the reality. And I could use things of excuses. I can't, I have epilepsy, so I can't do this. I have epilepsy, so I can't do that. There's very few things that I suppose this is why they asked me to do the talk, because it's very unusual. It's a very, very unusual approach. Because most people, when they're given a label, there you go, now deal with it. And you're not told how to deal with it. So I suppose I was quite lucky, as strange as it may sound, to have the first early experiences in a way, because they kind of prepared me, that I can either be defined by my experiences, or I can, just say this is the way they are, now let's create good ones. And that has been my mission over the last 20 years and going forward, to create as many good experiences as I can for me and other people. And I'll do whatever it takes.
Out of curiosity, is there any significant people or sort of hero type people that you would stand out in your life?
Funnily enough, I think I've met so many people, but I actually think one of the most humble people that I've ever met that has stood out in my life is John Boyle, from Boyle Sports. I know him 15 years, and he was one of the people actually that I met up with using the strategy. He had very bad alcohol problems, yet he went on to create a €1 billion company, 2 billion now. And I thought, what's he doing? I wanted to know. And I was at a talk and I asked him to meet up. And he knew I had no agenda. I wasn't looking for a printing contract, or I wasn't looking for advertising or whatever. So we met up and we got on really well. And then I met his partner and we've become friends. And then obviously, that's just the way things happen. And Mark Victor Hansen, I think, as well. And I only realised it. I know Mark for a while now, for, God, what is it now, 11 years. And it's funny, I only realised it because we did a call the other night, and it was the night before the call. I never actually said to Mark that my mom used to read Chicken Soup for the Soul to me when I was younger. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me until like 11 years later. And the amount of conversations that we've had, and I never actually told him. So I told him on that webinar, but that has been, he actually had a profound, and funnily enough, we lost kind of touch for a little while, just with, different events, and he was doing different stuff and whatever. And of the last few months, we've got back in touch more regularly. And again, there's lots of great stuff we're going to do. So, it's funny how people kind of step in and out of your lives. Not that he ever stepped out, but you know what I mean? That when people are there at poignant moments, and I suppose, so those two. And of course, Pat Slattery then as well. Well, actually, I have to say on that note, I did keep up the habit of meeting people, and because I found it a very good strategy to learn from people. And even though I started to become successful myself, I never felt that I should ever become so egotistical that I wouldn't learn from other people. So I always remain teachable. And in 2000, at the end of 2008, I think it was, Pat did a talk, and he was part of a property network, because I'd bought property and I'd written a book on property, and I asked him to meet up, and again, I had no agenda. So he ended up working actually with the event company that myself and another two guys had set up. And, now here we are. So, it's amazing the way things, and in actual fact, we were in the same room that we were definitely in the same room in 2004 at a seminar, and we didn't meet. Well, we could have met, but we didn't have a big long conversation. And we also, when I was 20, I got back into my modelling, and I had a casting down in Limerick, and he actually was 99.9% on the door that day, and I walked straight past him. So there you go. People come into your life at the right time. So
do you believe in fate?
I'm not sure. I believe that there's something bigger. I don't think it's as clear cut as fate, because I think if fate, would there be no point in doing anything, because it's all going to work out the same anyway. So I don't believe to that point, or whatever will be. I do believe we steer our lives, and I do believe we have choice. And I believe that we have lots of different paths that we can go down. I certainly believe in something bigger. I'm not of any form of religion, because it just doesn't fit with me. But I definitely believe that there's something bigger, that there's a higher energy. that we're all part of. And I think at times where, you know, we have so many different paths, and, you know, it's like you go on a walk for a long time, you're going to come to different roads, and you choose what road you go down, and then you come to another one, you choose what road you go down there. I could have went down lots of different roads that were very different to the ones that I'm at now. So I think we kind of have a part to play. I don't think we can blame fate that, well, this was all happening because, you know, somebody up there made it happen. I think we're responsible. We are responsible for a lot of our own choices. And I think, you know, if we look at even globally, a lot of the choices that we've made, even as nations and as people, they haven't been probably good choices. But whose fault is that? You know, we can all blame everybody else. But, you know, my choices, I was very miserable for a while, but whose choice was that? It was mine. It was a bad choice. I can make good choices now. And we can all make good choices. And our choices will predict and determine what roads we go down and who we bring down with us. So the people we go down hand in hand on those roads. So that's what I believe. So I suppose it's not a clear-cut answer. But I guess that's just the way I see it. So I'm kind of a little bit, it's a gray area for me. I don't think I'm strong enough on my opinion yet on that area, because I don't have enough evidence to say that this is exactly, everyone's life is destined to be a certain way. I've just seen too many changes to believe it's that clear cut.
Sure. So you mentioned that you're not religious. Would you call yourself spiritual?
Yeah, to a point. I believe that, like, I do believe that there's definitely something bigger. I do believe I don't see it as a person sitting up on a throne in the clouds. That's just personally for me. I don't see I don't know what it is, but I know it's there. That's the way I feel. I can feel it. There you go, my kinesthetics, I can feel it. I also, from people who have, if you've ever been around, it may sound like an odd thing to say, but if you've ever been in the presence of somebody when they die, you know that there is something there. Where, you know, we conduct electricity. Our bodies are made up by 80% water, which is the best conductor of electricity. We are energetic beings. You know, you have a kettle. A kettle is just matter. You plug it in and then it becomes, you know, has so much ability. And I think we're a bit the same. You know, we're just vessels, and we're plugged in and then we're plugged out at other times. But electricity doesn't just go; it's still there. So I believe there is a bigger source of that electricity or energy, whatever way you want to call it. There is definitely a bigger source. Energy can't be created or destroyed, so it's there. And when somebody dies, that energy you can physically feel it leave. There's a very different separation. I didn't see anything. So it's not like the movie Ghost where someone kind of just transplants out. I'm sure people have, but I haven't. But I've definitely felt at different times. And I've been around a couple of people who've passed away, and there's a definite difference. So that can't just be coincidence. But again, I don't think I'm pompous enough to formulate an exact opinion on that, because I don't think any of us can say that we're 100% right. We'll all find out one day. I think we can have theories, and I think we can have ideas, and we can have strong ideas, strong opinions, but I don't think anyone can say this is my way, this is the only way, and this is what is, when there is a doubt there.
Do you think you've been here before?
I don't know that either. Everyone says I have, so I don't know. I've had people say I'm their angel as well, but I don't. I've had a few people convinced that I'm their angel, but I don't have any invisible wings. I don't feel like an angel, and I'm sure if I was, I'd certainly know about it. Maybe I wouldn't, but I don't feel like one. And maybe I've been here before. Again, that's something. I feel like I have, but I don't feel like I know specifically what that means for me yet. I think a lot of people, maybe it's a good thing. A lot of people have opinions well formulated, because they've been handed them. And I guess maybe I got it from my mother. I've just questioned so much things. Do they make sense, or do they feel right, or is there any basis that feels in any way solid to that at all? And there's lots of things and I think personally for me, even at a basic core level, which is science, and it's a very basic thing because it's human understanding. Electricity is energy, and that energy cannot be, and if you look under a microscope, even at your hand looks like it's solid. It's not. It's constant moving cells, and they're even moving atoms. So, it's, to negate that fact, to argue it, would be a bit naive, I think. But equally naive to think that we know everything and that we've formulated an opinion that's a definite 100% truth. So for me, I'm exploring it. But I'm definite. I'm definite on the science bit. On the basic level, we are electricity, and we conduct it. So we take something out of a dryer, and actually, it's funny because, I keep giving Ashton little. You go past him and you touch his head, and I keep giving him shocks, static shocks. But even in winter, we actually get more static shocks than we do in summer, and that's because the moisture in the air is different, and electrons bounce differently, depending on the air and how much moisture is in it. So that tells us, that even our cells and our electrons are moving depending on how much moisture is in the air. So we're fully, if we're water creatures, let's say, we're going to conduct a lot of electricity. If water goes, we don't conduct a lot. And I think when somebody dies, the blood stops. And blood is made up of a lot of water. So it goes somewhere else. That's what I think.
Have you any concept of what you would like your legacy to be? Last year.
The people's art is cool. I think just to impact as many people as I can, and I don't know. I'll just see how it goes, and I'll just, as we go along, I'll learn more, and then I'll just spread that out. But I think maybe to be a person of good energy, to be a person of high energy. That's what I'd like. Yeah, and for people to. But I said to Pat, when I die, I want him to cremate me, and I want to put some of my ashes. I'm quite serious when I say this. You could actually, you've got this on record, so please replay.
There you go.
If I go before him, I told him I want to take a little bit of my ashes, and I want you to put them in a firework and just do a fireworks display. Send me off with a fireworks. That's what there's a way to go in fireworks.
We'll spread you all over Dublin.
No, a beach would be nicer, but I'd end up on top of this fire. Yeah, find a nice place and shove and do a fireworks display. A ball of energy. That's what I'd like to be remembered.
Oh wow, fair play. Tell me this, quite importantly, do you remember what your snail was called?
Chrissy. And I had my dad was a fishmonger, and he he used to get those, the white boxes that you put the whatever aero board, the boxes that they put fish in. And he gave me one of those, and I made a whole bathroom suite for Chrissy. I was very imaginative as a child. I probably still am, but yeah, I always use my mind to create stuff.
Lovely. So tell me this, fire in the belly, if you were to summarize it in a word or a couple of words, what would it be for you?
I would say fire in the belly is igniting somebody's energy and making sure that it stays ignited. And
that is a two-part process, obviously. It's something you said there. Obviously the ignition bit's fine, but it's make sure it's lasting.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. Honestly, Donna, it's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just remind people how they can get in touch with you and how the best way to reach out.
Yeah, you can email me at info@donnakennedy.com, DONNAKENNEDY.com, and you can also find me all over social media. And anywhere else you can find me at events, so you can seek me out. I'm happy to talk. And listen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and look forward to seeing what happens in the future.
Thank you. Likewise.
Take care.